Do you know that in the 16th and 17th centuries, bathing was believed to be one of the fastest ways to invite deadly disease into your body? People truly believed that water could kill you. To understand why, watch this story to the very end. Today, bathing is one of the most normal human routines. It represents cleanliness, health, confidence, and freshness. But for hundreds of years, people across Europe genuinely believed that washing the body with water was dangerous. Not uncomfortable, not unnecessary, dangerous. This belief was not a rumor. It was supported by doctors, religious leaders, government authorities, and even royalty. The fear centered around the idea that water weakened the body. According to medical understanding at the time, the skin was not a protective barrier like we know today. It was believed to be filled with tiny, invisible openings called pores. These pores were seen as gateways into the body. People believed that when you entered water, especially warm water, it caused these pores to open wide. And once the pores opened, they believed deadly substances from the environment could enter your bloodstream. What were these substances? They blamed bad air, toxic vapors, invisible poisons, and corrupted moisture. They had no idea that bacteria even existed. Germs were completely unknown. Disease was not understood at all. So when people bathed and later became sick, they connected the sickness directly to the bath. Over time, this belief became stronger than fear. It became doctrine. It became social law. Parents warned children not to bathe. Doctors warned patients not to wash too often. Communities judged those who liked water too much. Instead of cleaning the body with water, people began to clean only what could be seen. They wiped their hands. They cleaned their faces. They changed clothes. They masked odors with heavy oils, powders, and perfumes. But their skin often remained untouched by water for months or even years. What makes this belief so powerful is that it lasted across generations. Children grew up hearing that water opened the body to death. They became adults who taught the same fear to their children. Over time, bathing was no longer seen as hygiene. It was seen as a risk to life itself. This was only the beginning of a deeply rooted fear that would define how entire civilizations treated their bodies for centuries.
The strongest force that transformed bathing from normal behavior into a deadly suspicion was one event: the Black Death. Between 1347 and 1351, the Black Death killed an estimated 75 to 200 million people worldwide. In Europe alone, nearly one-third of the population died. Entire cities collapsed. Villages disappeared. Families vanished in days. People were desperate for answers. They did not know what caused the disease. There were no microscopes, no germ theory, no understanding of infection. When people looked for something to blame, they chose the things they could see. One of those things was water and public bathhouses. Before the plague, many European cities had thriving communal baths. People went to bathe, relax, socialize, and even receive basic medical treatments. These bathhouses were warm, crowded, and filled with steam. When the plague began spreading rapidly in cities, people noticed something. Many of the sick had visited bathhouses. This observation created a deadly assumption. They concluded, the baths are spreading the disease. In reality, the disease was spreading through fleas carried by rats. The bathhouses had nothing to do with it, but that truth would not be discovered for hundreds of years. Instead, fear took control. Cities began to shut down public baths, ban communal washing, warn citizens to avoid water. Water became associated with sickness. Steam became associated with death. Warmth became associated with infection. From that moment forward, bathing was no longer a luxury. It became a suspected killer. Even aristocrats and royal families began restricting how often they washed. Instead of bathing, they relied heavily on perfumes, scented gloves, aromatic oils, and multiple layers of clothing. They believed that good smell meant good health. Odor was treated as the enemy, not bacteria. This created one of the greatest ironies in human history. People avoided washing to protect themselves from disease, but their avoidance made disease spread even faster. The Black Death locked the fear of bathing into the collective mind of Europe. And once fear becomes tradition, it becomes extremely difficult to remove.
Beyond medicine and plague, religion became one of the most powerful forces that reinforced fear of bathing. In medieval and early modern Europe, the human body was often viewed as something dangerous to indulge. Pleasure, comfort, and physical attention were seen as distractions from spiritual discipline. Bathing, especially frequent bathing, fell directly into this category of suspicion. Many religious leaders taught that the body was weak and sinful by nature. Anything that made the body feel too comfortable was seen as encouraging temptation. Warm baths, steam, and physical relaxation were believed to weaken moral strength. Clean skin was not associated with virtue. In many cases, it was associated with vanity. Public bathhouses also raised concern because they involved partial nudity and shared spaces. Religious authorities began connecting bathing with immorality. Some bathhouses were accused of promoting indecent behavior, even when there was no evidence. Over time, the idea spread that bathing was not only physically dangerous, but spiritually questionable. Certain religious movements went even further. In extreme interpretations, refusing to bathe became a sign of holiness. Dirt and hardship were seen as proof of humility. To be visibly uncomfortable was considered a form of devotion. Cleanliness, in contrast, was associated with pride and indulgence. This belief created a powerful contradiction. Today, we associate cleanliness with respect, discipline, and order. But at that time, too much attention to the body suggested weakness of the soul. People were taught that suffering strengthened faith. Discomfort was purification. Dirt became a symbol of spiritual endurance. In this environment, bathing felt unnecessary at best and sinful at worst. This religious influence did not exist separately from medical fear. It merged with it. Medical voices said water opened the body to disease. Religious voices said water weakened moral resistance. Together, they created a complete system of fear. To bathe openly was not just risky, it could damage a person's reputation. It could invite judgment. It could label someone as indulgent, careless, or even immoral. And when fear becomes social law, most people obey it without needing force.
What made the fear of bathing even stronger was the role of physicians. Doctors were the highest medical authority of their time. Their opinions shaped law, lifestyle, and survival. And for centuries, many respected doctors strongly advised against frequent bathing. Medical theory during this period was built on a belief system known as humoral medicine. According to this theory, the human body was governed by 4 fluids: blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile. Health depended on keeping these fluids perfectly balanced. Bathing, especially warm bathing, was believed to disturb this balance. Doctors taught that hot water opened the pores, Open pores weakened the body's defenses. Sudden temperature change shocked internal organs. Moisture allowed harmful substances to enter the bloodstream. Because disease was still believed to be carried by bad air, doctors warned that open pores made the body vulnerable to toxic vapors in the environment. Some medical texts even suggested that dirt acted as a natural shield that blocked disease from entering the skin. This idea encouraged people to leave layers of dirt on their bodies as protection. Doctors did not completely reject all washing. Instead, they advised washing hands occasionally, cleaning the face when visibly dirty, avoiding full-body immersion. Baths were sometimes prescribed as treatment, but only under strict conditions and usually for the already ill. Even then, doctors feared that improper bathing could worsen the patient's condition. Rather than promoting water-based hygiene, doctors promoted herbal rubs, alcohol-based cleansers, ointments made from plants and oils, strong perfumes for odor control. The goal was not to remove bacteria, which they did not know existed, but to control smell and maintain humoral balance. Because these instructions came from educated professionals, society trusted them completely. When a doctor warned against bathing, people listened. And when generations of doctors repeated the same advice, it became unquestionable truth. This official medical resistance to bathing delayed proper hygiene for centuries.
The fear of bathing did not affect only the poor. Even the wealthiest members of society followed these beliefs. In fact, some of the most famous historical figures lived with extremely limited bathing routines by modern standards. Instead of washing with water, the wealthy relied on layered clothing, perfumes, and powders. Multiple undergarments were worn so the inner layers could absorb sweat and be changed frequently. This gave the illusion of cleanliness without water touching the skin. Perfume became essential. Strong scents were used, not for luxury, but to mask odor. Glove makers soaked gloves in perfume, handkerchiefs were saturated with fragrance, rooms were filled with incense. The goal was not cleanliness, it was concealment. Even royal palaces often lacked modern bathing rooms. Personal bathing spaces were rare. When baths did occur, they were carefully controlled, infrequent, and often limited to the upper body. Sub-monarchs were known to bathe only a few times per year. This was not because they disliked cleanliness. It was because they genuinely believed bathing too often was dangerous. Water was feared, scent was trusted. Meanwhile, streets were filled with waste and sewage systems were poor. Disease spread rapidly in these unsanitary conditions, yet bathing was still blamed instead of filth. This created a tragic contradiction. The very thing that could have improved public health, regular washing, was avoided. And the thing that actually worsened conditions, crowded, dirty living spaces, was accepted as normal. The illusion of cleanliness replaced real hygiene.
By the late 1700s and early 1800s, cracks began to form in the old beliefs. Some scientists, doctors, and reformers started to question traditional medical ideas. They noticed something strange. People in cleaner environments seemed to live longer. Hospitals that practice basic cleanliness saw fewer deaths. Doctors who washed their hands before surgery sometimes had better patient outcomes, even though they didn't yet understand why. These observations created tension between old theory and new evidence. At first, many traditional doctors rejected the idea that cleanliness could prevent disease. The humoral theory had ruled medicine for centuries. To admit it was wrong meant admitting that generations of medical advice had failed. Still, evidence continued to grow.
In cities where water access improved and waste management became better organized, survival rates increased. Death from infection began to drop slowly in certain areas. These improvements could not be ignored. For the first time in history, some medical thinkers began to openly question whether dirt truly protected the body or whether it actually harmed it. This was the beginning of the slow collapse of the old fear.
Everything changed in the 1800s. With the invention and improvement of microscopes, scientists could finally see what had been invisible for all of human history: microorganisms. For the first time, disease had a visible cause. The work of scientists like Louis Pasteur proved that microbes, not water, not air, not open pores, were responsible for infection. This discovery destroyed the foundation of humoral medicine. Doctors learned that disease spread through contact, dirty surfaces carried microorganisms, clean tools saved lives, washed hands prevented infection. One of the most powerful turning points was in hospitals. When doctors began washing hands between patients, death rates dropped sharply. This was undeniable proof. Water was no longer the enemy. Dirt was. Public health systems were rebuilt around this new understanding. Sewer systems improved, clean water supply expanded. Public baths returned, not as a luxury, but as a health necessity. The belief that bathing weakened the body collapsed rapidly once scientific proof appeared. Within a few generations, society reversed what it had believed for centuries. Bathing became protection, not danger.
For most of human history, people feared water because they believed it invited death. In reality, avoiding water made death more likely. This fear was not based on stupidity, it was based on limited knowledge. People built entire civilizations on the best explanations they had at the time. Those explanations were wrong, but they were followed with complete confidence. Parents protected children by teaching them to avoid baths. Doctors protected patients by warning against washing. Religious leaders protected souls by discouraging bodily comfort. Everyone believed they were doing the right thing. And yet, the result was centuries of unnecessary suffering. This story is not just about bathing. It is about what happens when authority replaces evidence. It is about how fear can become tradition. It is about how long truth can remain hidden when no one is allowed to question accepted belief. Today, we believe we are more advanced. We believe we are more informed. But history proves that every generation believes that. The people who feared bathing also believed they were living at the peak of human understanding, and they were wrong. If you were born in a time when doctors, religion, and society all agreed that bathing could kill you, would you risk your life to stay clean, or would you obey the fear to survive? And what beliefs do you think we accept today that future generations may one day prove completely false?